gonna be fine. Can you hide somewhere? Can you play dead?
17 lives lost after a gunman opens fire at a Florida high school.
Possible shots fired at Stoneman Douglas High School.
It's the tragedy that triggered a new wave of talk and action to keep our kids safe.
A crazy person just walks right into the school, knocks down the window of my child's door, and starts shooting her, and killing her.
Here in central New York, dozens of threats reported and schools taking action.
He's moving!
Teachers training for a day they hope never comes.
I actually screamed as if it had been a real thing.
Tonight it's time to talk about solutions. Is more gun control the answer? More police officers in our schools? And what about mental health? Are we doing enough? This is about your voice,
your future,
and your school.
Good evening and welcome to our special live broadcast. I'm Matt Mulcahy.
And I'm Megan Coleman. It's your voice, your future, safe at school.
And I'm Michael Benny. We're broadcasting live from Liverpool Middle School, and tonight we've assembled a group of panelists along with many special guests.
On the panel tonight, Dr. Mark Potter, the superintendent of the Liverpool School District, one of our experts with us tonight. Also, mass shooting expert, professor from SUNY Oswego, Jackie Schildkraut.
Scott Armstrong is a former NRA spokesman, NRA certified instructor, and a supporter of the Second Amendment. Chris Major is from Auburn, a school resource officer. And Renee Ryder, the associate commissioner for the Office of School Operations and Management for the State Education Department.
And here in the middle school cafeteria, our guests also include people who are here to listen and offer their perspective. Congressman John Katko is here, along with state and local representatives and many members of law enforcement, local school districts, and mental health professionals.
Well, we'll begin tonight with a voice that needs to be heard. Nearly 3 months ago, we all turned our attention to Parkland, Florida, for one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history.
17 people were killed when a gunman opened fire inside Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School.
The man you're about to meet's daughter was murdered in a classroom that day. His name is Andrew Pollack, and when he found out that we were doing this event tonight, he wanted to share this message with you.
I still feel like I'm going to see my daughter again, so it doesn't feel for me like she's really dead, like she was murdered. It doesn't feel real to me, but maybe I'll see her one day, but right now that's what keeps me empowered to keep going with this mission that I got.
Andrew Pollack is now living for his murdered daughter, Meadow, planning fundraisers near his home in Coral Springs, Florida, and pushing an agenda he never saw coming.
I had the most blessed life before this happened. Half of me is gone. My family, I've changed, and to my friends, I feel bad, and my wife that puts up with it. I'm a totally different person, and I can't help it for what happened to me. And I'm focused on not letting this happen to another family.
And I'm pissed, because my daughter I'm not going to see again.
You may remember Pollack from his emotional appearance at the White House just after his daughter's funeral, addressing the president in his unmistakable Long Island accent.
I'm very angry that this happened, because it keeps happening. 9/11 happened once, and they fixed everything.
We put our most precious commodities inside a school, and there's no reason why anyone could just walk in. You shouldn't be able to walk into a school with any type of weapon, whether it be a knife, an axe, a bomb, a gun. So it's pretty simple. We're a different breed. And just the way I grew up, not knocking anyone else, but we're proud. We're coming from New York. I'll always be a New Yorker, and I'm a fighter. I'm never going to quit until I know I exhausted myself as much as I can to make my message get across to everyone, which is making our schools safe. Children and teachers should be protected when they go into school. They shouldn't have to worry about active shooter. So that's what my legacy I want to leave for my daughter is when you drop your kid off at school, they're safe. They don't have to worry about someone coming in the hallway and killing them. I want it as safe as like when we go on a plane.
He wants metal detectors and locked doors. But he's not convinced politicians and police can be trusted to get the job done. So he has a message for you. Start with your school board.
If you have children and you're concerned about your local community, it's more important than who the president is your school board. They control millions of dollars. they control the security of your children, and they control their education curriculum, and also the behavioral metrics.
He wants more school resource officers, even though it appears the officer at his daughter's school failed her and everyone else that day.
We left it to one officer that day, and he failed. So that's why you can't just have one. You need a team of security. There needs to be layers of security in place at a school.
Of all the images burned in our brains from February 14th in Parkland, Florida, the children running from the building, the panic and pain in the eyes of parents, there is something we'll never see. The place where 18-year-old Meadow Pollack was shot 9 times. Last week, Andrew went back as part of his work on a commission to evaluate security failures and come up with new solutions.
I was able to see which room my daughter was murdered at, and that I can't tell you how hard that was for me to take that in. That I had to walk away and just take a moment for myself while I was at the school. I just look at some pictures of her, and I can't just let her death go in vain. That I'm going to make a difference.
That's Andrew Pollack of Florida. His daughter's name is Meadow. What does he want? He wants one school resource officer in every school per 1,000 students. What about guns? He wants to stay completely away from the issue of gun control. He says, as Americans, we'll never agree on it, so he's sidestepping it completely in favor of several layers of security at our schools. Throughout the next hour, I'll be here monitoring social media. If you're watching from home, tell us what you think on the CNY Central Facebook page. Let's get to Matt Mulcahy right now. Matt?
Well, Michael, let's get the audience involved in this. When I ask a question, I want to give me a show of hands when I ask the question. Keep your hands up there for a second. Who in the room right now thinks we are not yet doing enough to keep our schools safe? Keep your hands up. Okay, put the hands down. Thank you. And how about this question? Do you think a school should be made just as safe and secure as, say, going to take a flight at the airport? Hands up on that? A mix. Interesting. Thank you for the early input. And it kind of touches off this debate about where we're going to go with this. Scott Harris here from Armored One. And Scott, if you just stand up for a second, you've had a unique position since Parkland. Your company, your experts have been going to various school districts in New York and across the country. What are you hearing from people in terms of what they want in their school districts?
They want a multifaceted approach. They want not only more training for the teachers and the administrative staff, they want other layers of protection. They do want officers in schools, and they do want other things that will help protect their school and harden the target to make sure people can't get in when they're not supposed to be in their school.
Are you hearing a heightened level of concern from schools since February 14th?
We're hearing it from a lot of different angles now. It's not just a teacher, it's not just a student, and it's not just an administrator. It's groups of people, it's friends, it's parents, it's everybody.
That sets the table. It's everybody. Megan, what other guests do we have here tonight?
We have a number of people here tonight. Certainly a student, Greg Porsing. He is from the Baldwinsville School District. Greg and I met not too long ago talking about mental health in the Baldwinsville School District. And Greg, you are part of a very unique group of students. What are you guys doing that's different maybe from other districts?
Well, I'm not sure if it's necessarily different from other districts, but what Baldwinsville has decided to do is enact a conversation among students and faculty that is kind of a small, closed discussion where it can just develop into anything. And I think that that's really good because it shows just the benefits of a variety of conversation and a lot of different perspectives for problems and solutions.
All right, so Mark Potter on our panel, the superintendent here in Liverpool. Is mental health part of the package that you all are looking at when it comes to this issue? Is this something that voters will be considering coming up?
I think from a reality perspective, in order for us to look at this from a proactive perspective rather than totally reactive, I think we have to identify where the problems begin. And I think we need resources, meaning counselors, social workers, something from the mental health perspective to really support and assist us in really identifying where the problem exists and begins.
we're talking about zero tolerance. We saw in Onondaga County, the district attorney happened to be in the city of Syracuse with some serious charges against a student who made a threat. We've seen it in Cuba County. Just about every county has had at least one student charged with this making a terroristic threat charge. Why, from a law enforcement point of view, is it important to take cases that reach that level and make a charge?
Well, it has to be zero tolerance because we've seen in cases where things were uttered and nothing was done in what it led to. I know the district attorney has taken a position in this county, and there's a reason why we have this law in place, just for these very situations. And while it may not be something that we choose to do in law enforcement, this situation is so serious that we need to have the message reverberate back to parents that even an utterance of something like this in school or outside school has to be dealt with.
You've touched on something important in terms of the bigger picture. Parents listening to the teens and then communicating back to somebody like a police officer.
Absolutely. It's so vital to this situation that there's communication between the parents and the students about what is going on in this country when it comes to school security and school safety. We're there, obviously, to enforce laws. The school resource officer is there also to educate and to be a counselor, actually, in many circumstances. I've yet to see a circumstance where a school district anywhere, Central New York or any other place, said, this is not working, we want that person out of the school. The only reason school resource officers have come out of schools is for financial reasons, and I think that's wrong.
What do you feel when you hear criticism of the Florida case in particular, where law enforcement was alerted, the FBI didn't do the right thing, and so on, with related to this idea of zero tolerance?
I don't think one bad example of a school resource officer should overshadow the thousands of SROs who are doing tremendous work in the schools each and every day. We don't hear about it because they're actually doing their job. They're on top of things. They're minimizing situations. They're interacting with the kids and the staff to help prevent these situations from going further.
Thank you, Sheriff. Now, Chief, you know, these school shootings almost always are in a suburban setting. They're kids in Parkland, a nice community, fairly well-to-do. You work in the city of Syracuse. What is a city school district doing? What are city police doing on a daily basis dealing with what you have to deal with that keeps the mass shooting from happening in a city school?
Well, you can't take anything for granted, and we've been extremely fortunate, but, you know, crime has no borders, and there's no rationale as to why these folks decide to do this to begin with, so we can't think that we're immune to any of this. And so we're taking the same provisions that anyone would in the county and keeping our schools safe. I'm in constant communication with Superintendent Jaime Alicea. We've sat down a number of times and gone over school safety assessments, our training, and everything that we could think of to keep our young people safe in the city of Syracuse.
And what are they doing in the city schools? Metal detectors in the high schools?
There are metal detectors in the high school, and there's a number of other safety measures that we're taking. And we're also assessing what we're currently doing to see if there's more that can be done or if we could do what we're currently doing a little bit better.
There was a story we had on the news recently that the police union was saying, we don't want our SROs in the school anymore because they're not getting the support they need from the administration. Do you agree with that?
I run the Syracuse Police Department, and no, I don't. We will have our school information resource officers in our high schools.
Thank you, Chief. Megan?
So as this conversation continues tonight, I want to ask the audience, how many of you regularly attend your school board meetings in your community? Okay. All right, so let's talk to this gentleman here. Could you stand up for me, please? What's your name?
My name is Max Mamargalou.
And Max, how old are you?
I'm currently 15 years old.
Okay, and you attend school board meetings on a regular basis?
I do.
What school district?
I'm from Jamesville Duet.
Okay, and why do you attend?
Well, especially after these shootings and after all these incidences, I feel that students' voices are now more and more important and are being listened to more and more. And I've tried to push that even at our school district, to push voices and concerns that I face and bring my perspective to the board, which is the perspective of a student, which, according to our board policy, each elected member has to be 18 years old and not be either employed by the school district or be a student at the school district. So I feel like it's important to voice my opinion.
Jamesville DeWitt actually has come out with a pretty sweeping plan of what it wants taxpayers to approve come budget vote time. Are you pleased with what they've rolled out?
I feel like they've done a lot of talk, and they have done a lot of policy changes and done a lot of funding for some of these instances. But I feel like there are parts of this discussion which they're not talking about. And I feel like one of those big things is, yes, they're paying for an SRO. They're planning on implementing an SRO for the coming school year, but they have not talked about any policy changes, anything to discuss instances that might occur, including racial bias and things like this in our school. And they're like, they're throwing money at the fire, which is not going to put out the fire.
So you think more needs to be done?
I do.
Okay. All right, we're going to continue that conversation. First, we'll go to Michael.
I'm getting a lot of comments from people who say they're learning about how things are done in other school districts, and many people are saying that they never once considered the fact that it's not being done the same place everywhere, which is sort of interesting that some people are thinking that. I want to turn it to the panel because you've now had more than a half hour to listen to the voices in the room, to listen to the perspective of some of our invited guests. And I just want to go just down the line, and I want to start with you, Dr. Potter. I want to know one thing that you've learned so far that either you didn't know already or something that jogged something in your head and you thought, well, maybe that's a good idea. Is there some takeaway so far for you from what you've heard from the people out here?
I guess the one thing that seems most prevalent is the fact that people looking at the audience and looking at the conversations and the questions that are coming forward, that this issue is unlike previous issues that seem to have hit a high and then kind of fell off the table rather quickly.
There's been some sustainability here with the passion on it.
I think that's great.
Jacqueline, for you, the takeaway so far that you've heard?
You know, I think for the students, you guys are in a very different generation than a lot of us in the room, where you guys are effectively the Columbine generation. And I think the fact that you guys feel like this is a safe space for you to come out here and voice your opinion, I think is probably the most powerful thing that we're seeing, because, you know, the level of advocacy that you guys have here at the local level and also at the national level with the March for Our Lives movement, you guys are doing what needs to be done and what should have been done over the last 19 years.
Scott, your takeaway so far, what have you heard?
Michael, I'm very impressed at kind of the breadth and depth of what's been discussed and some very real multi-level solutions. I think as the guy who represents the voice of responsible firearms owners, one of our frustrations is so quickly these things often turn political. And we have not endorsed, participated in, or wanted any of these tragedies that have happened. I've been to funerals at Sandy Hook. I've been to many places that may surprise you for a pro-gun guy. Gun owners want safety too. We have kids in the school, and the question was asked about arming teachers. I have an opinion on that, but that is certainly not the first line of defense. That's a defense of last resort. There's so many other things we could be doing, and I like to see the depth and breadth of what's discussed here.
Chris, for you.
I've gotten a lot out of the discussion.
Sorry to step on your applause, Scott. That was not my intent. Chris, go ahead.
No, I've gotten a lot out of the discussion tonight, and again, I've been working in the schools for quite a while, but the students here, I think, raised the best point. I mean, they're the ones that need to be heard. We tell our students all the time, they are the most important part of our safety team. Me and Officer Martin are two officers in the building. There's 1,500 students and 200 staff. Those are the ones we need to come forward, speak up. They know what's going on. They're the pulse of the school. When they speak up, we can act and we can help them.
Great, I agree with that, and I just think that they're the ones that are in school all the time, and they can analyze. Sometimes at this department we say, when we bring a group of students together, we say, if you were the state education commissioner or you were the superintendent of the school or the principal, what would you do and what do you want to change? And I think we all need to listen to that and ask those questions, because I think that they know. The other thing I would say is that I've learned here is I just see a lot of strong partnerships. There really are in the room some strong partnerships, and that's really key to this work. Some of those who aren't all at the table yet, I think it's important that all of us look at those partners that are partners to be and bring them closer and have even a stronger partnership, because that's what's going to be able to solve some of these problems.
We generally get along in Central New York, don't we? We generally get along. Let's go to Megan right now.
All right, Michael, thank you. And I am with an interesting group of people here. Tell us your name, if you could.
Crystal Rasbeck.
And where are you from, Crystal?
Mexico.
Tell me a little bit about what has happened here with your son. 14?
Yes.
14. What happened with your 14-year-old son?
A lot of confusion. A lot of, my son has been accused of something he did not do. Everything has been blown way out of proportion.
Making a school threat specifically?
He has been accused of making a school threat. My son did not make a school threat. My son made a comment of how stupid kids are nowadays as far as what they're doing on social media, making threats. And someone had overheard the conversation. They were not involved in the conversation and decided to turn it around. And now my son has not been in school since March 22nd over miscommunication, over hearsay. And I'm here tonight. I had a lot of questions. I've had a lot of intel. I know a lot of you guys, you're talking a lot about mental health. That's come up a lot tonight.
But you say that's not an issue for your son.
My son is very involved. He's in, clubs. He's in sports. Very involved in everything. The ROTC. He's a very good kid. He's had perfect attendance since kindergarten. My son is being treated very unfairly, and they are not allowing him back in school this school year. And I just don't feel that the punishment fits I don't even like saying the word crime, because my son has not committed a crime.
So I guess to the panel, or perhaps to some of our invited guests, how do we handle these sort of incidents where a student is accused of making some sort of threat or something that has disrupted the school day? How do we handle that, and how do we move on from that? And what sort of punishment should be appropriate if, in fact, that student is found to be guilty of that crime?
My microphone, yeah, there it is. Auburn Police Chief Sean Butler joins us now to talk about that kind of issue. How you get called to Auburn High School, somebody said something to somebody. How do you handle it as a police officer, as an investigator?
Well, that's something I think that's been missed tonight, is the role of the SRO, the school resource officer, at least in the city of Auburn, is so much more than just an armed officer in the school. I'm so blessed to have the partnership with our city council and our school board, that we have a commitment from the Auburn School District to have our SROs for the next 5 years, so we don't have to worry about the funding. I am so pleased with the mentorship that our officers have with the children. I think it goes so much further, and it prevents these issues, and they have the relationships to get involved with these types of discipline issues within the schools. They have the rapport with the kids, and I think that's what the programs for SROs, it's that much more than just an armed officer there. So in regards to the discipline with the kids, our SROs are intimately involved. Excuse me. They're intimately involved with the principals, with the discipline, the internal discipline within the schools. They vet these types of threats, which I think is ultimately important. The students are due, their due process as well. And we're not going to make an arrest without probable cause, and we can show, that in fact something did happen.
And of course, there's some cases, and I don't know the specifics here, but we can't go back to, we're just running out of time. We could talk about it after, but in some cases, it's not an arrest, it's a matter of school discipline. That's a different story.
And that's usually like where the school likes to go. An arrest of a student is a last resort. That is not what we're there for. That is an absolute last resort. And unfortunately, sometimes it has to come to that.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Michael?
Matt, thank you. Chief Butler, thank you as well. We have a comment from Mary Jo, who actually wants some advice. Earlier, excuse me, I was talking about people who are writing into us on Facebook, and they really are craving some expert advice. She says, my son's school does not have a school resource officer, and I feel it should. I'd like to ask a resource officer about how they would make the case to add one or two in my school. We'll start right here on the panel. Chris, take off your school resource officer hat for a minute and put yourself in this woman's shoes. She wants to make the case to the school board, to the district, that we need to do this. What is the pitch?
Well, I'm a parent of three, and my wife's a teacher, so I'll play that role as a dad.
So you certainly, then you're well qualified to answer the question.
It's a cost of one teacher. I mean, at the end of the day, putting an officer in the school is the same cost as having one teacher. It's how much you value having the safety and the officer in the building. I know I'd be advocating for it. We're lucky enough. We're 18 years in Auburn. We've had it. My kids have grown up with an officer in school. Where in this day and age, if they didn't, I would be absolutely down there advocating for it.
You would if there was not.
If there was
you
not,
would.
I'd be advocating with the school board. If I had to run for school board, I would.
Does anyone on the panel not think that a year from now we will have a good percentage more school resource officers in place in districts across the state than we do right now?
I would hope.
Doesn't it feel like that's where the train is going?
We guard banks, we guard movie theaters, we guard malls. Why would we not guard our kids?
Dr. Potter, I'll let you get in 1 second. Dr. Potter, are you seeing and feeling pressure to add more from parents? Are people calling up saying we don't currently have enough?
The question has obviously come forward. I think the question that we ask is, when they talk about a school resource officer, I'm trying to get to the specific detail of what is the particular question. Is it the badge? Is it the gun? Is it the uniform? Is it the package? Because there's a difference between a school resource officer and a security individual. And I think that's where we are really...
And you have both in Liverpool, right?
We have no school resource
No
officer.
SROs, but you do have those security officers.
Right. So the question that's come forward with us is asking us to put a school resource officer in place.
There's a push for a gun and a badge.
Yes.
Okay, let's go to Megan right now. Megan?
Michael, thank you. I'm with Acadia. She's in the Jamesville DeWitt School District, and you have actual concern about security in one way, shape, or form. Why?
I think every time we talk about school security, the subject of racial bias needs to come up because with more security, there's statistical evidence that says that it puts kids of color and it marginalizes them and it endangers them when there are untrained professionals, when there's no training for racial bias and racial integration in schools.
Have you seen students of color disciplined in a different way than white students?
Yes. I've been to two different school districts and I've seen it happen both times. There's statistical evidence online for every school with discipline by race and how disproportionate it is at every school in the country.
All right. Acadia, thank you very much.
We're going to bring Megan over as we talk about some final thoughts. I learned a lot, but I was most struck, Matt and Megan, by we'll put you in the middle.
It's always a good call.
The level of engagement seems so incredible, but then you hear from superintendents and school board members who say, nobody shows up. Nobody is
well,
questioning.
Let's put it this way. Everybody in the room and everybody watching at home knows this is a critical issue. Right. Safety at school is a critical issue. Nobody can deny that it's a critical issue. But as Superintendent Potter just parsed out, what do you see as the solution when you really get right down to it? And as we also talked about, the bigger picture. How do you get the conversations going with teenagers to their parents, to the parents of the school, to the parents of the board, to find out what's actually going on inside somebody's mind, inside their heart, before they get to the point where they're anywhere close to harming someone, letting alone getting into a fist fight with a friend at school, which used to be all that it was.
So I'd like to ask our audience here tonight, how many of you will now be going to a school board meeting? How many of you will now be contacting your state and local representatives? In all seriousness, has something been sparked inside of you that makes you want to go home tonight and email, call, reach out, go, attend? Has something changed for any of you?
I bet if they're here, they're the ones who already were going to the school
We've got
board
an engaged
meeting.
group, which is nice, which is certainly nice to see. There has been talk here. The question is, how do you translate talk into action? And we do have people in the room, and we've been talking about it all night, who are in positions of leadership, who are in positions to do something about the issues that are out there. And we are committed to continuing that conversation. It does not end here tonight for sure.
It's also worth noting that, very fortunately, these shootings have not happened in upstate New York. We don't want them to happen anywhere. Apparently, what's being done at schools in our region has been keeping children safe. It's already keeping them safe before February 14th and after February 14th, whether you look around Liverpool Middle School, which was remodeled 6 years ago, and the effort that was put in that to key fob your way into the building and to have security cameras, or whether, as Chief Fowler said, you're at a city school, Corcoran High School, with metal detectors. It's something that's being done right already.
But as so many superintendents have said, we can't be naive to think that it can't happen. We need to be prepared. So we're going to continue the conversation on our Facebook page, our CMI Central Facebook page. For now, we will say goodbye from Liverpool Middle School for our live broadcast tonight.
Thanks for joining us tonight. Town Hall, your voice, your future, safe at school.
Good night.
Good night.